Hi, my name is Rory Canterbury. I'm going to be the host today on Archery Talk 101, and we have Tim on the line with us. We're going to talk some archery today. I just want to let everybody know before we get started, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself, as well as in the Facebook group, Archery Talk 101. The audio is on, Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts at, as well as you can listen to it on Audible. So let's get started here. Tim, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's going to be a fun time talking archery. It always is. So,
Absolutely.
so Tim, how about if you introduce yourself and tell our audience a little something about yourself?
My name's Tim Yohman. I'm a lifetime archery nut. My Grew up in Northeast Ohio, a little town, Youngstown, Ohio, about an hour south of Cleveland, on the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania. Um, my dad put a bow in my hand as a pretty young boy. I was probably 10 or 11 when I got my first bow. At that time, my dad had a small sporting goods store there um, in a little town called Hubbard, Ohio. He sold archery equipment, fishing equipment, new and used guns, that type of thing. So he was an avid outdoorsman and archer, competitive bass fisherman. So he had the outdoors in his blood. I was one of five boys, so he had, if we were going hunting or going fishing, there was at least two or three of us in tow most of the time. Um, but definitely found a love for archery. I love the outdoors, like kind of across the board, hunting, fishing, pretty much anything you could do outdoors. But just something about archery that um, really took a love to it, and just couldn't seem to get enough of it.
Yeah, there's definitely something about archery that's different amongst any other, sports that you're going to do. Whether it's the traditional type sport or hunting sport. There's just something about archery that kind of puts a different mentality in it. You think differently when you're got a bow in your hand.
Yep, absolutely. It seems to kind of quiet the noise down in your head, the daily stresses of life and those types of things, when you can kind of narrow that focus down and draw the bow back and aim. It seems to kind of it's almost therapeutic.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of mental aspect to the our shooting a bow, and it's been around for so long that it's 65,000 years old. So it's been around for a long time, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. And nice thing about archery is you can do it just about anywhere.
Yep, absolutely.
It, you don't have to be a big athlete or nothing to shoot a bow. You can whatever size, shape, or ability you have, you can pick up a bow and shoot it.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody, you don't have to be fast, you don't have to be tall, you don't have to be a good athlete. If you can take a little bit of instruction and have some concentration, you can definitely pick it up pretty quickly.
So when you first picked up your bow, what was kind of your first thoughts when you took the first few shots?
Well, that was a long time ago. I just turned 50 here, a little over a week ago. So that was probably, roughly 40 years ago. I think, it was probably, at the time, it was probably just, one of those, another way to spend time with your dad. You definitely, look up to him, and he was a pretty, he was a pretty big guy, and he was a really good outdoorsman. He was kind of well known in the area that we lived in. So it was just kind of one of those, um, you want to be like him. You want to kind of follow in his footsteps, and
Yeah.
you know,
So what was the first bow you shot? Was it
It
a
was a, I
recurve
don't remember
compound
what
or?
Martin, I don't remember what model it was, but it was a Darton. Um, I remember I had a Darton. Darton was my first bow. Um, and then my second bow was a Oneida Eagle. I don't know if
Oh
you
yeah, I
remember those
remember
back
them.
in the day.
Yeah.
And then I went to, and then my dad and I had kind of got, that's when 3D archery really kind of started kind of coming about, late 80s, early 90s. We started hitting some of the 3D shoots at, a lot of the local clubs in the area. And him and I would go and shoot together. And I was in that, 14, 15, 16-year-old range where I was kind of starting to, feel my oats a little bit. And I was getting to where I could beat him every once in a while. And I was starting to talk a little bit of trash. And I remember one day he asked me for some Allen wrenches, and I handed him a set of Allen wrenches. He took the sight off his bow and handed it to me, and he never put a sight back on ever again. He continued to shoot instinctive, and it was kind of one of these here, hey, hold my beer, watch this. So
Yeah.
he liked to remind me, hey, I taught you everything that you know, not everything that I know.
Yeah. And I suppose he still beats you once in a while with those sights.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. I know I started um, back in the 60s, and that's before compounds even existed. And, I started with just a 25-pound fiberglass Ben Pearson bow, and I shot it. I'd take a cardboard box and stuff cardboard in it for something to shoot at, and I just would shoot in the yard and have a lot of fun with it. And I set up for bow fish, and I had to tape a little bracket on it, and I can't even get my hand in there now, but I still have the bow,
Wow.
from the 60s. And I have a couple arrows. When I was in scouts, we made arrows and had the kind of clip-on points, points on them, or the broadheads, and then the wooden shafts and the feathers. And I still have some of those arrows I made, back then, in the 60s. And I don't shoot them anymore because it's worth more as, you know, sentimental than it is for the value of them.
Yeah. It's got to bring back some cool memories looking at that old bow from the 60s and
Yeah.
remembering how it all got started. I kind of wish I still had some of my some of my old equipment. But from that Oneida Eagle, so starting to shoot some of the local stuff. My dad had some friends they were started to travel to some of the IBO circuit, and they asked, if he would like to go, and he couldn't get away. But he said, would you mind taking, Tim along with you? And they agreed. And so I started doing that. And he got me I believe I was 16. He got me a Proline Point Blank was the model. And that back in that, late 80s, early 90s, a lot of guys were shooting high poundage to get the speed.
Yeah.
I remember I was shooting that bow at 90 pounds at 16 with a 5-inch overdraw with a Barner inertia style rest. I remember that, and shooting aluminum arrows out of it, and you know, probably still not getting anywhere near 300 feet per second. Probably nowhere near as efficient as the bows are now.
Oh yeah.
But that was against his better judgment. He did not want me shooting that much weight, but I wound up talking him into it. But
Yeah, the logic back then was, shoot the overdraws, you get the shorter arrow, you can make them faster,
yep,
and then shoot the heavier weight so you can get them faster, because the bows weren't very fast,
yep,
and in that way, the faster the arrow, the closer the pins, the less judging yardage is
yep,
critical. Because if you're off by 5 yards and you're going really fast, it's not as big deal as if you cut your speed down. That can be, it could be, you're off by 5 yards, could be 3, 4 inches
yep,
on some of the slower bows.
yep,
And
absolutely.
I've had some with overdraws on them, but I haven't set anything up that has overdraw on it for many, many years.
Mhm.
When I had my store, back 20 some years ago, I always made sure the arrow was in front of your hand.
Okay.
I worked at Bass Pro for a while and Cabela's for a while after I had my own store. And this guy come in and he says he was at full draw and he didn't have any, the arrow fell off the rest,
Okay.
right-handed. So now it's sitting off, basically resting at his hand. And on his hand, between the index finger and the thumb, there's a three-sided scar.
Oh, wow.
He didn't know it fell off the bow until he pulled the trigger and shot the arrow through his hand.
Oh, wow.
And that's why I tell him that it's like, if it falls off and the point's sitting on your hand, how do you let down? Because it's stuck onto your hand.
Yeah.
You're not trying to, and then if you accidentally pull the trigger, who knows what happens?
Yep.
So that's why I always like it in front of your hand. So the tip of it is in front of your hand. So unless the arrow breaks, it still might slap your hand, but at least it's not shooting through your hand.
Through your hand. Yep.
And then, now they have, like they come up with the whisker biscuit, the full capture one where it won't fall off.
Mhm.
Advantages of that, but the disadvantages, it does slow your arrow down. It does affect the flight. If you're shooting feathers or you're shooting vanes, it's going to fly differently and, all that. So there's advantages, disadvantages. Um, I just use on my hunting bow, I have a 2-prong rest.
Mhm.
And I've got it set up so it's wide enough that the arrow sits in there nice, but narrow enough that it doesn't fall through, so
Yep.
it's sit there. So I can turn my bow almost 45 degrees uh, either direction,
Mhm.
and it doesn't fall off. Right around at 45 it's going to start falling off, but I have quite a leeway in there way I have it set up.
Yeah.
But it takes a while and knowing what you're doing and then get your fletching to go through. And if you have a big um, twist on your fletching, then they don't fly through. And
Mhm.
there's quite a bit to setting it up so that you can have that. Now, and when I target it's a drop away, so it has a little guard that goes around it, so it's not going to fall off.
Yep.
Um, so I could lay over quite a ways and it's never going to fall off and hit my hand. But that's a lot of stuff that you have to go through and set up and just to keep keep you safe. And last thing you
Yep.
want to do is have an arrow break when you shoot it.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
I've had them break, but not when I shot them.
Yeah.
I had a
I've never
bow
had
break when
one.
I shot it one time, but
Yeah. Luckily never had one break coming out of the bow, but I've had go down to pull it out of the target and it's broken in the target. So I was pretty fortunate there.
yeah, yeah. When the one bow I had broke, the riser broke in half
Oh, wow.
when
Was
I
that an
shot.
aluminum riser or back when they were doing magnesium risers?
The magnesium riser. It was a
Uh,
poured magnesium riser. It was an American Challenger was the model. It was American was the company and Challenger was
yep.
the model. A High
Okay.
Point or High Country bought them out.
High country.
So
Yep.
when it broke, I they replaced with a High Country bow, and I had nothing but problems with that. I never did shoot it.
Right.
I ended
I
up
remember
trading it
when,
off to a High Country dealer here not too far from me when I had my store. It's like, it's like I could not push that bow because so many problems with it, from start the time it showed up, defective and
yeah, I remember when High Country first came out. My dad and I were, this is kind of a funny story. My dad and I were shooting a little indoor league. And it wasn't a like a 5 spot league or anything. It was paper animal targets and they had
oh yeah.
different scoring rings on them. And you had a team, I think, of 4 guys, and you would shoot the first week for handicap and then, and then shoot the rest of the weeks for score. And it was at a sportsman's club and it was just a, metal building. And the bales I remember were just pressed cardboard where they just stacked the cardboard and it kind of compressed it down together because bows really
Yeah.
weren't that fast yet. And my cousin Chris had bought. He was the first one in the area that had a High Country, and he came in there with that High Country. And the first arrow he shot, and it like made this crazy noise. And we went down there, and it was buried up to the veins. Well, it had pierced through the outside of the metal building because it
Oh no.
went all the way through the cardboard and was sticking out the building in the back. And the guy who ran the league said, okay, that's enough. We're not, no, you can't shoot that bow here anymore until we figure out how to improve the bales. And then they wound up putting conveyor belt rubber behind the cardboard, and that kind of slowed it down for a little while. But
Yeah, that when I was in a club, that's what they had is the cardboard ones with the conveyor belting behind it, so it wouldn't go, any further. That would kind of stop because it was kind of loose hanging back there. And problem we run into was you start getting when they moved from aluminum arrows to carbon arrows.
mm-hmm.
The carbon arrows were a little bit rougher, so when they go into the cardboard and they were fast enough, it would create enough friction, enough heat, it would soften the glue
Mm-hmm.
that holds the cardboard together.
Yep.
And you'd pull out, once you got your arrow back out, you'd have
Pull.
cardboard glued to your shaft.
Yep. You pull a layer of the
So,
cardboard with
so
it.
you're cleaning it off. So then they got, lube it up with soap so that at
Yep.
least it didn't stick to the arrows, and then they come out, the little tubes that you dip your tip into to get
Yep.
some lubrication on the end of the arrow, and all kinds of stuff. But now with the foam ones, it's much better because they don't get glued together like that.
Yep.
The cardboard was cheap because you could get the cardboard fairly cheap, but man, it was a pain on those shooting carbon arrows at 70 pounds.
Yep.
If you didn't lubricate the end of the arrow, yeah, they get glued in.
Yep. And you have 2 or 3 guys on there trying to pull it out.
Yeah, yeah, they get glued in there pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, things have definitely evolved greatly over the years. And some of the designs, I mean, of the modern stuff is so simple. Like it's almost like you wonder like how, how did we not think of this, back then?
yeah. No, when I had my store, I bought some foam that used like an auto industry, basically some rolls from this place,
Mhm.
and I'd roll it out. I was cutting them and rolling them, and I was banding them. I had one of the nylon banding, um,
Mhm.
tensioner and all this stuff to band them, and I'd band them together, and those worked really nice. Because if one part got shot up, I could just unband it and I could move those pieces around, and because
Mhm.
everybody seems to shoot about the same spot, except that spot's worn out.
Right.
Then you'd move it, and then you could always cut them and flip them, and you could make it last quite a while.
Yeah.
Um, I had 3 of them. I got one left. You know,
Where was your store located at?
in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
Yeah, we did fishing, bait, and tackle, and
Okay.
as well as archery. I stocked a bunch of stuff with black powders, and I had martial arts equipment in there as well.
Mhm.
So kind of a little bit of everything. What was here? There
Right.
wasn't any martial arts stores around, so me being in martial arts for many years, it's like, okay, so I started stocking uniforms and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to kind of be the natural progression of things. You kind of get into something and you love it, and um, you gain some knowledge and gain some influence, and then you kind of um, wind up promoting it, or um, being a proprietor somehow.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed doing it, but I didn't. There's parts of it that wasn't a lot of fun. Trying to do all the other stuff because I had to do best besides doing everything.
Yeah.
Is you know, so after that, it's like, okay, if I have a business, if I can't afford to pay somebody to do this, this, and this, and this, it's not a viable business.
Right.
Because I don't want to get in doing everything, and which is kind of what I'm doing now for the stuff I'm doing. But
Mhm.
it's not like I have a big overhead that I have to make sure I meet, and
Right.
because I'm a lot of stuff I do at home, and that makes it a little bit different. But I remember one time when I had the store at Halloween time, this group of people get together and always have a theme for their Halloween party. So this one person came in, and I was looking for something, and I was, where do you train at? And he said, oh, it's just for a Halloween party. We have
Mhm.
a theme. It's another person came in. It's like, where do you study at? And it says, oh, it's for a party. And it's like, okay. By the time about the 4th or 5th one, it's like, okay, yeah, somebody going as this, somebody going to this, somebody going as this. So I'd tell them something different. So they all
Right.
had something different.
That's awesome.
That was kind of interesting when they come in doing that. But yeah, I was a PSE dealer for um, all those times I was there. I also
Okay.
did Martin, mostly for their um, recurves and longbows.
Hmm.
I Around this area, the Martin compounds just wasn't real popular, and I was pretty big into the PSE. There was three other store shops in town. I sold more PSEs than all of them put together
Oh wow.
because I stocked PSEs.
Yeah.
And the last year I had a store, I sold 40% of my bows were left-handed.
Really? Wow.
40% because I stocked left-handed bows.
Yeah. And people would come and yep. Yeah.
Think
That's
about it. You shoot right-handed. Would I want to try a left-handed bow to see if I like the bow?
no.
So I stocked left-handed bows, and
Wow.
back then the Nova bows or the Dan Fitzgerald bows, it's the same bow, just how they stickered the limbs.
Yeah.
You had three different sizes and weight ranges. I'd stock two rights and one left
Okay.
because generally you're going to sell more right-handed bows than
Hmm.
left-handed bows, but
Yeah.
I stocked them, and it, the manufacturers charged a little bit more for left-handed bows.
Hmm.
I paid more for left-handed bow, but I sold them for the same price.
Yeah. I
So
have.
I made no difference, right or left-handed. It was the same price for the same item. I didn't, you know, upcharge it because okay, it's left-handed. You got to pay $10 more for the same bow. I
Yeah.
just kept the same price. It just
Right.
made it a whole lot easier for me in the long run. I didn't have to deal with all the other stuff. And when I got the bows in, I made it so nobody could price compare
Hmm.
because I took the Nova bow and I added. The first thing we do is we had a lot of trouble with you draw it back and you hear this little creaking sound. They didn't lubricate at that time. They weren't lubricating the pockets very well,
Hmm.
so they're basically dry. So teach my guys what to do. Bow come in. First thing we do is we'd put it in a press. We'd take the strings off. We'd lubricate the pockets, put it back together, and then we'd tie on some string silencers. And we call them little poofa balls. It's a
I
little.
remember
We would use the skirting material used for bass jigs, bass fishing
little
jigs.
living rubber.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And I'd get them in multiple different colors, and I got a whole bunch of colors, like
Hmm.
a dozen different colors you could get them in. So you could pick whatever colors you want, because you could pick two colors, it goes four colors. And we'd tie it on a really tight and pull them and cut them and form a little ball on it.
Yep.
So we'd put those on all the bows, that come with them. Back then, PSE sold the True Fire release
Hmm.
under their name. It was
Right.
made by True Fire for them. And it was, my cost like $11 and they sell for 15, $20, something like I forget what it was now. Um, I could buy it cheaper through PSE than I could through, the distributor. But so I included one of those with all your bows. I also grabbed 6 arrows because they come with a quiver, a sight and a rest, and a stabilizer. And then I made sure all of them had a stabilizer, a sling, of course, the rest, the sight and the quiver, 6 arrows with points, everything you needed to shoot except for a case. And the Plano cases, the problem with those is you go to Walmart and pay $5 more than what I paid for wholesale
Hmm.
to get the
Yep.
same case.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't stock that one. That's like not worth my time
Yep.
when I have to sell it for more than what Walmart's selling it for,
Mhm.
or only make $5 on a case and take up all the room that case takes.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that much extra space to waste on keeping, hard cases.
Yeah.
But I did have soft cases. And then if you want anything special, you'd special order it in. But, you know, I'd also include instruction with my bows. So you couldn't price compare.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that was the good part of doing that is you'd set it up so that you couldn't you couldn't go somewhere else and get it.
Yeah.
Because if you bought the bow somewhere else, I'm going to charge you $40 to set it up
Just set it up. Yep.
and $100 an hour to teach you how to shoot.
Right. Yep.
So like no brainer.
Yeah. So it's better to just come, to buy it there and set it
Yeah.
up. That's
I actually had one guy take a bow back and come by it for me because he called and said, "You think I can set it up?" It's like, well, you can bolt it on, but setting it up, probably not,
yeah.
because he didn't know how to do it. I
Right.
could eyeball them and get them set up better than a lot of people did with just trying to use tools. And
Yeah.
because once you set up a couple hundred of them, yeah,
You
you
kind of get
you,
a
you
feel
kind of,
for it.
yeah, it's like, okay, this goes here, this goes. Okay, we're done, set up. And then for most beginners, the boats will outshoot them anyway.
Yeah. I shoot for a really good shop here in Lampasas, Texas. And the guys in there, they're like, I, I'm, I'm really well versed in the bows that I shoot, and I can, I know, I know all the ins and outs of that particular bow. But I see, when I'm up there, helping out, working with those guys, um, you know, any bow that comes in the shop, like Aaron or Jason, the two guys that run it, they seem to know, like, you know, this brand or that brand, whatever it is, he'll say, "Oh, you need to do this. Put a couple twists in that yoke. Take a couple twists out there, or that's how you adjust the mods on that particular model." Like, he's just really, really well versed in pretty much anything that I've seen come in there. He's pretty amazing. And their service is exactly like what you're saying. Like, they'll, if you buy the bow there, they set it up for you. They spend, a good hour and a half, giving you some instruction and kind of, um, getting you squared away and trying to help you make some corrections and trying to make it the best, the best experience for you that they can.
Well, and my thoughts, of course, they're spread the same way that, if I can get you shooting good and hitting what you're aiming at, you're more likely going to stay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I always push beginners, like in the Nova bows, that time it's like a $350 setup.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's probably 500, 600, but get the basic setup going.
Mm-hmm.
And if they like the sport because they're actually hitting stuff, as they get better, what are they going to do? They're going to upgrade.
Yep.
So now instead of trying to push them in and buy the top of the line bow, which means that they're probably never going to buy another bow from me
Yeah.
because one, I talked them into spending way more money than they wanted to.
And you got them in trouble with
And
your wife.
well, yeah. And then if they don't like the sport, they've got this $1,000 or now it's $2,000, $3,000 bows sitting in a corner someplace
Right.
that they're not using. And, I kind of felt bad having, you know, if I pushed a high end bow instead of a low end bow to a beginner, because had to cough here. So, yeah, if it's sitting in a closet, I didn't feel as bad with a $350 bow sitting in a closet as opposed to $1,000 bow.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's like, okay, I wouldn't want to waste all this money if I didn't like the sport. And
Right.
by teaching them how to shoot, they're more likely going to like the sport and stay with it because they're going to be coming buying more arrows. They're going to be, eventually they're going to want to upgrade to a better quality arrow. Um, and if they're all they're doing is losing arrows, they're not going to want to come in and buy arrows all the time. So that saves them on arrows. At some point, they're going to upgrade to a better quality arrow. They're going to upgrade to better sight, better quiver, or a different quiver maybe, or even different rest. Most
Mm-hmm.
likely rest and sight and arrows is the three things to upgrade on.
Yeah.
And the first thing you should do is upgrade to a better release,
Yep.
because the ones that I give with them they were functional. That's all I'll say for them.
Right.
They functioned.
Yep.
not, not like a, get a high quality one. And, that it includes on a beginner really, beginner release.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I use a handheld release. I also have a wrist strap that I use. And, handhelds, is that the kind you use, the handheld?
I am, yeah. I'm using. Um, I've shot a back tension or a hinge for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Recently switched this past year. I switched to a thumb button. Um, and I guess you can't really say modified it, but I shoot a true ball goat. Um, but I couldn't get it heavy enough. I get a lot of coaching from Michael Braden. He likes a very heavy release. You're kind of preloading a lot of back tension into the release, and then hooking your thumb or hooking your index finger around. If you're shooting an index finger release, and you're pulling with your elbow to try to set the release off. So to get it heavy enough, I actually put I took their spring out. And Mike likes the Carter releases a lot. He's had a lot of input
Right.
on, with Carter Enterprises. But I couldn't get a Carter that I felt really fit my hand. I have big hands, so I really like the True Ball Goat. So um, I found some heavier springs for it. I wound up buying a spring for it's an extractor spring for an M1 Grand
Oh,
rifle,
okay.
and put it in there. And I could get it about as heavy as I want. So it's probably, I haven't measured it. I don't know how many pound trigger pull it is, but it's pretty heavy where you can really wrap your thumb around it and and pull pretty good. But it's real crisp. I usually set it with little to almost no travel at all. So it's kind of on the edge there with the travel, but the trigger tension itself is about as heavy as you can get.
That sounds like mine. I got the Carter Chocolate Addiction,
Hmm.
and I put the heaviest spring they had in it.
Yep.
And I can, as I wrap around, I can put my thumb. I took that knob off because I don't need it. It's just in
Hmm.
the way because
Right.
and I put the trigger where it fits in that little pocket in your hand between the index and the thumb. It fits back in there. And
Hmm.
then I can take the thumb and actually put pressure on the release. And then as I pull through, like you, I got that heavy trigger and there's no travel. Because if
Yep.
I feel travel, then I start thinking about the trigger moving.
Yep.
And I know when I had my store, True Fire called me up one time and wanted me to carry some of the releases. And I first I told them if the Walmart carries it, I don't want it
Hmm.
because I don't want to price compare.
Don't want to
And they
compete with
had a
them. Yeah.
handheld one. I forget which model it was. They
Hmm.
had a handheld one, and they sent it to me to try out. Well, I can shoot it, but the travel is just it's got too much travel on it.
Hmm.
It just doesn't work as smoothly. But at that time, the Carters were running about $150, and this was like a $70 release, so it was half
Right.
the price.
Yeah.
But you can see the difference in quality.
Right.
I still
Yep.
have it. It's in my backpack when I go hunting as a backup,
Oh wow.
because I could shoot it as a backup if I needed to. Because
Yeah.
I have dropped my release out of the
I
tree
have
stand
two.
before.
Yep. Yep.
And I
Dropped
keep
it out of the
my
tree stand, or I lost one out in the field, um, and never found it. So
I did that too on one of my Carters. It's like I forget which model it was. It's where I got the chocolate addiction.
okay.
And I put it in my coveralls and I'm walking out and got to pull stuff out and it was gone. And there was snow down the ground. It's like I went back and tried to find what I could not find it.
Yeah.
And then what I have now, I actually lost it one time, but I knew I had it at the back of the truck. So I knew about where it's at and we was able to find it again. But
Okay.
man, that's kind of tough. And
Yeah.
when it gets really cold here, now in Texas, you won't have to worry about the cold weather like we do up here
Right.
normally. You do have some cold days down there,
I.
but I use my Scott wrist strap
Hmm.
because it has, I put the trigger on it, it has a little hook on it.
Yeah.
So I can find that loop without looking at it and hook up and draw because I
Hmm.
only need my index finger out. I can have glove on the rest of it.
Yep.
With my handheld, I have to basically have pretty much the back of my hand can be covered. That's about it. So I
Yeah.
have a glove that's kind of pretty much all shot. It has just a little bit of cover on the back and some of the fingers because I need to be able to feel the fingers. I need to be able to feel the trigger. I have to be able to feel all this stuff. And when it gets cold up in here, in the wintertime when it's down to freezing or below, because mine has a little hook, it'll lock onto the loop.
Hmm.
So I can find the string, run it down between my ring and middle finger and find the release and draw. I don't have to look at it.
Yeah.
Because for me, every time I look down at my bow, I look back up and the deer's looking at me.
Right. Yep.
And it's like, okay, now they're staring at you. Now you can't move.
Yeah.
So I just like it where I don't have to look at it to hook it up. And, like you get the jaw type that closes around it. You have to pull the trigger, open them up and close around it. And, I got to look at it and I just don't like those kinds. So I don't
Yeah.
use them.
Yeah, we can't. Place that I hunt here in Central Texas, we're hunting a lot of what we call hill country deer here. They're a little bit smaller deer, but they're extremely wary. Like moving here from Ohio, I almost kind of had to learn how to hunt all over again. Like you were saying, um, there's not really many trees to get into, so hunting in a ground blind. And you get away with even being in the ground blind, you get away with very little movement. Any little sound or anything, they spook real easy. I had, like, just like you said, many, like, a lot of those encounters, you know, over the last couple of years where you kind of look down and you look back up again, and they don't really give you the opportunity to, they're not like, stomping their foot and putting the head up and down, kind of looking at you. They immediately spook and they're gone. So that's what I would, after coming home without anything for quite a few trips in a row, I told my wife, I said, I feel like I have to learn how to hunt all over again here, because, hunting out of a tree stand, Northeast Ohio, Ohio, I had Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, was able to go to Kentucky a couple of years. But it seemed like the hunting there, hunting out of a tree stand, the deer were a lot less. I mean, they were still wary. Like I hunted some public land or some places that were somewhat high pressure properties that were, permission pieces. But you could definitely get away with a lot more there than you can on these spooky little hill country deer down here.
Yeah,
But they
I
make you
know
work
here in
for it.
Nebraska, hunting out of a tree stand, they don't normally look up unless you make a
Mm.
noise.
Yep.
Now there is one Gifford Point where there's so many people hunt it, the deer have learned to look up.
Yep.
So they will go by and they'll look up if they see something that doesn't look right. They look
Mm.
up, so they're constantly looking up.
Yep.
So if you get busted out of one spot, you got to leave. And
Yeah.
no matter, even if I don't hunt there, but if I'm in a spot and all of a sudden a deer looks up at me and it doesn't spook off, it walks off, I don't hunt that anymore.
Right.
That's done. I might leave the tree stand there, but I'm not going to hunt it anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, because I don't want to disturb the area, and I'll put something else up somewhere else or move it
Mm.
to somewhere else because they're going to just keep looking up.
Yeah.
And then now you're starting to train them to look up in trees, and
Right.
you don't want to do that.
No. So what part of Nebraska are you in?
I live in between Omaha and Lincoln,
Okay.
so we're here on the eastern part of Nebraska.
Okay. I got an invitation from a gentleman that I've been shooting some archery, some 3D tournaments and stuff on the national stuff with, to go to Kansas next year in 2025. If I'm lucky enough to get drawn for a tag. He's been sending me some huge bucks that they have up there. He's got on trail camera, so I'm hoping I'm able to pull a tag for there next year.
Yeah, that would be nice. But down there, if you pull a tag, you'll have to send me some pictures of it.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah,
That'd
he's
be
been
fun.
sending me some trail cameras. They've got some big deer up there.
So what bow you shooting now? I see a Matthews sign in the background. Are you
Oh,
shooting a
yep.
Matthews or?
So I do. Yeah, I'm sponsored by. I guess kind of a little bit of background. I got out of the archery game for a while, and then right after COVID, 2021, we moved here to Texas in 2017, and I had a kind of went through the whole COVID deal, and I had a buddy invite me on a hunt. So I said, I need to go I need to go shoot my bow a little bit. So started looking for some, local archery shops or clubs, and I actually found a club that was just a couple miles from my house we'd been living there 3 or 4 years, and I had no idea it was there. Um, so went over and got a membership. And then I would go over in the evenings and 3-4 nights a week and shoot and got my bow all sighted and ready for the hunt. And I saw that they did 3D shoots there, and told my wife, I said, well, next spring I'm going to go over um, and try out the 3D shoot, with my hunting bow, and just go have some fun. And because I'd been out of the competition stuff, for the national competition stuff, for a while, for about 14-15 years, and went over there and made it about halfway through the 3D course. And I called her on the phone and I said, I'm back in. So I found it was, that was, the whole COVID era was kind of hard, getting stuff. So
Right.
I called, a couple of the shops in the area and asked about getting a Matthews, the TRX 38 G2. And they said that the lead time was, 3-4 months at that time. So I found a used TRX, a Matthews TRX 7 on Archery Talk, and bought that, and started shooting some state competitions. And the archery shop there in Land Pass has helped me get it set up, and kind of, got me started again, and shot state competitions. That first year, I jumped in about halfway through the season, and then wound up winning the state championship that year, in the open 40 class. And then the following year, 2022, I started going to some of the national pro-ams. And then I shot the semi-pro class for 2022 and 23. And then this past, I guess it would be this past fall, October, I applied to get on the Matthews pro staff, and got accepted. So I'm currently shooting the Matthews title, the 38. So, and shooting in I'm shooting the senior pro class. This is my first year as a professional. So shooting their Matthews title 38 as my target bow. And then I just, about a month ago, I haven't got it completely set up yet. I just got the new lift, the Matthews lift in. And I started kind of putting it together and getting it set up, and I stopped myself because I knew, like, we're still in competition season, and I knew if I went down that rabbit hole and started shooting it, I wouldn't want to put it down. So
Yeah.
I said, you know what, let's just set it over here, and we'll wait until after the last. We've got our last competition, ASA competition, coming up next month in Coleman, Alabama. So once that's over, then I'll finish getting that set up and get that ready to go to hunt with.
Kind of nice to have a bow for hunting and a bow for target, because they're
Yeah.
set up different. I know my arrows do not fly the same as my target arrows,
Right.
and I don't care, because I have one bow set up that I set up to shoot broadheads.
Mhm.
So I don't care how the field tips hit. And if I
Right.
shoot practicing with it, I know they're not going to hit where I'm aiming, but I don't care, because I know they're going to be, the broadheads are okay.
Right.
And then when I get, closer, I'll put in some used blades. I use the Muzzy 3-blade.
Okay.
I've been, Muzzy's the only broadhead I've ever shot.
Yeah. There's
You know,
probably more deer killed with the Muzzy 3-blade than any broadhead on that's
yeah.
ever been on the market.
My first deer was a Muzzy 4-blade.
Mhm.
I, I don't remember what the weight was. It was more than 100 grain. I think 125.
Mhm.
And my first bow I had was 52 pounds. I was shooting I think it was the 21/17s full
Yep.
length
Yep.
with
Probably the Game Getter
145
twos
grain
or
tip.
double
Yeah,
X
yeah. I
75s
think,
or
yeah, something like that. And then later on I switched to double X 78s because they're a
yeah.
little straighter, but
Mhm.
um, and I was about 20 feet up in the tree, and the trail was 40 yards away, and I shot that deer, turn around to run, and here's my arrow stick. I think the fletching stops from coming out the other side,
Wow.
and like almost clean pass through it, 52 pounds. It
Wow.
was a heavy, slow arrow,
Yeah.
but it made connection and it went through.
Yep. Yeah, those
It didn't go
Muzzies
very
came
hard.
out. They came out of the box really sharp. The Muzzies, and then the old Thunderheads. The old Thunderheads were always really
Yeah.
sharp out of the box.
And then I switched to the 3 blade 100 grain.
Mm.
And those, Muzzy's thing is they're bad to the bone. I have hit bones and shattered bones
Wow.
and still pass through deer.
Yeah.
In fact, one night when I had my shop, I was I was shooting in my broadhead. I brought a broadhead target because I won't shoot in my regular target because it just tears them up. I had one for regular broadheads I was shooting in to get them set up. Well, I messed something up and I shot completely above the whole target. There's a concrete block wall back there.
Wow.
I hit the concrete block wall. So I go up there and here's my shaft laying on the ground. The broadhead is stuck in a concrete block. The insert is cracked in half and the shaft is hitting at the bottom and the shaft is cracked back about an inch, inch and a half. I pulled that out. It did not hurt that tip on that broadhead.
Wow.
I couldn't tell you which one it is because
Uh,
it did not hurt the broadhead a bit.
yeah.
And I cut the shaft down past all the broke stuff and give it to my son to shoot in his arrows.
Right.
And it's that was the
Keeps on
PSE
ticking.
arrow.
Yeah.
They had some tough arrows.
They did.
And I also took one and shooting field tips and I missed somehow and right next to the edge of the door, the steel commercial doors, and there's a hallway in the back there that the doors go into.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent that arrow through that door, not all the way through, but it stopped in the door. But it penetrated both sides of that door and stuck out the other side.
Wow.
Didn't hurt the shaft, didn't hurt nothing. It was just a regular field tip.
Yeah.
Didn't hurt the shaft at all. It just right through. Of course, I shoot in 70 pounds too, so there's a little bit of force.
Yeah.
But those arrows, they can develop some pretty good power.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple of Robin Hoods. One someone else done with some cheap arrows, and then one that I did with the Muzzies, showing how much penetration difference there was between the shafts. And I don't know what the weight was the other one, but I'll guarantee it wasn't at 70 pounds. Mine was
Yeah.
done at 70 pounds, and it didn't even come close to maybe a quarter or maybe up to a third of the distance. It penetrated the other shaft as
Wow.
opposed to the other ones that were shot at less weight. It
Right.
penetrated all the way through, and that's the difference between quality of shafts.
Yeah.
You know, you you kind of get what you pay for when you're buying arrows.
You do. Yep. Absolutely.
So, what kind of arrows are you shooting?
I'm currently shooting gold tips. I'm shooting the X cutters for 3D right now.
Yeah,
And I'm indoor. I was shooting the triple X's.
yeah. That was the two shafts that I would carry, the PSC and the gold tips.
Mm-hmm.
My son's got some that with the traditions ones. It looks like a wood grain, looks like a
Oh
wood
yeah.
shaft,
Yep.
but it's a carbon shaft. That's what he shoots.
Okay. Yeah, they
Yeah,
sell quite a few of those up at the shop that I go to up there in Lampasas. That seems to be a popular shaft. That one that looks like the wood grain.
yeah. Makes it look like you're shooting wood arrows, but you're not.
Yep.
I had one time somebody said there's shooting, want to know if you could shoot wood arrows out of a compound bow. And I responded, no. And some other guy tried to tell me that you could, um, only if you want wood in your hand
Right.
or your arm.
Yeah.
Now, I suppose if you get one of the really, really old compound bows that
Yeah.
didn't have any speed out of them, you
Right.
probably could. But any of the modern ones, that wood shaft would just shatter.
Yeah. Yeah.
The tip would probably never even move.
You'd be picking splinters.
Oh yeah. And just like when the carbon shafts first come out,
Mm-hmm.
because they were all laid, the carbon fibers would run from the knock to the tip. They're all in a straight line. And when they broke, you'd have all these little bitty carbon fragments all over the place. And so I refused to even think about those.
Yeah.
And then they come out with the ones where they were in a cross pattern, that some would go vertical and some go horizontal. and then PSC come out with the XE, which they're actually an X pattern on the shaft.
Mhm.
And those, when those would break, they'd break clean.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
similar
so
to what I think Victory has, that cross weave pattern now, I believe, on some of the
yeah,
Victory shafts.
yeah, and I'm sure there's other ones that have picked up that pattern.
Yeah.
But those first ones, there's no way I'd shoot them, and
Yeah.
they're completely smooth and everything else. And yeah, I wouldn't shoot them. And then they come with some of the outserts on them because they're
Yeah.
so skinny and have the big old outsert on them and the big old knocks on the end of them. And yeah, it's so much better now, the equipment now, than what we
Yeah.
had,
Yeah. Equipment's come a long
back.
way. The amount of information that's out there has come a long way with the introduction of like YouTube and all that. When I shot IBO tournaments from like up till about 2008. And I remember sitting around with, buddies of mine and just saying, there's got to be stuff that we don't know, like what, and, a lot of the guys who shot as professionals and stuff back then, it seemed like they didn't give out a lot of information. There wasn't the information on tuning and, um, you know, uh, like strategy as far as 3D goes. They're definitely a really kind of secret that everybody kind of has kept until just, I think probably just recently within the last 3 or 4 years was, teaching other people how they judge yardage and how they estimate yardage. And I think a lot of that stuff, I think a lot of the guys who shoot the unknown game have kind of seen with the emergence of, all the known classes. I think they came to the realization like, hey, if we don't start, kind of giving some of this information away and, teaching people and, educating, some of the younger people, the unknown game may eventually go away. Which I definitely don't want to see that. I definitely,
Right.
want to try to pass that along. I have a few, 3 or 4 guys that I'm working with here in Texas, that are gonna transition. They're currently shooting, known yardage classes. And they want to transition into, an unknown next year. So they asked if we could kind of get together in the off season and, kind of work on it and kind of teach them some of the ins and outs. I think once you get somebody out there and you kind of break that, mystique and kind of start to unravel some of the, the unknown, um, some of the mystery of it, I think it makes it a little more comfortable for them and kind of takes some of the anxiety away of, stepping up to a 48 and a half yard Wolverine target that's down there in a dark lane, and you're looking at it and you're like, oh man, I have no idea how far this thing is. So you kind of teach them to, how to gather all the information, that you're given. I guess I could kind of tell you how I judge yardage. Um, I'll step to the lane, step to the stake, and I'll take a look at the target. And my first initial judgment is based on, just depth perception. I'll look at the animal, and I'm kind of looking for an initial number just based on, you know, um, I guess it's more of a feel, from having shot that, repetition, shooting that animal, a bunch
Yeah.
of times and seeing it at different yardages. And I'll get that initial number. And then I'll kind of start, kind of fine tuning it from there. I might look at it and I'll get a short number and a long number. I might look down in the lane and say, okay, this is a hill country deer. You know, I could see it being as close as, 40, 41. And I could see it maybe being, the longest I could see it being is, 43 yards. And then I'll start using the ground and start looking for different things. Looking for where my 30 mark is at, try to find
Right.
find my 30, find my 40, and then kind of start, fine tuning and refining my number from there, and then get an idea of how confident I am in my number, how aggressive I want to be. And then I'll, if I'm not shooting first, I'll go sit down on my chair and then I'll go to, to listening to arrows. And then I'll try to listen to arrows. And then if I've shot with those particular people before, and I kind of know what strategy and what game plan they run and where they're aiming, and then I kind of see where, okay, where their arrows impacted, then I'm kind of refining my number from there. So that just kind of gives you a little rundown as to what's going on inside my head, trying to get a number.
Yeah, and that's kind of why you rotate who's in a group of four, who you take turns who shoots first,
Yep.
because the second, third, fourth person has a little bit of advantage, the previous one shooting, to see what they did, how they shot, and
Yep.
all the kind of different things. And sometimes they kind of give away a little bit of information when
Yep.
they get off the line, and so that's nice. You cycle through, so you're not always shooting first or shooting last, and
Yep.
kind of keeps it a little bit better. But and then you have to look at, okay, am I shooting uphill or downhill?
Mm-hmm.
Because they look further than what they are.
Yep.
And then you got to compensate. Okay, it looks like it's 50, but it's actually only 20, because I'm so far up. And um, I've told this story a couple of times on here too, but I judged when I went down on the trail. I was up in a ladder stand on the top of a hill. The trail was down at the bottom of the hill, and I took the trail. I found a tree. I followed up so it was level to me, and I says, "Okay, that tree is 20 yards away, and that trail is 20 yards, and deer can walking by, and the size of the deer told me it should have been 40 yards because it was so small.
Mm-hmm.
I shot it for 20. It was 20." Because the trail was 20 yards horizontally.
Right.
It didn't care how much vertical height there was,
Yeah.
and that messes people up too. And then the really short yardages, like put a target at 5 feet.
Yeah.
See how many people can't even hit it,
Right.
especially
Yep.
a small target,
I've
because
I've been with guys, they were shooting, semi-professional class, and we'll walk up to a target that, like you said, it's 3 yards, or 2 yards, and they didn't take the time to shoot. I shoot in my short marks. Like I'll take a tape measure and stretch it out, and I'll take a 3D target, a deer or an aoudad or something, and I'll step back every 3 feet, and I'll shoot until I find the exact mark on my sight, and then I'll write it on a card, and I'll put it in my wallet. So then every once in a while they'll throw us one of those out there, that's to see if everybody's prepared. And you always have that one guy in the group that he's like, I'll just put my 20 on it. Like, no, it's not going to work. Yeah.
I
I
had one
watch
where
guys
I
shoot
was,
fives on those.
oh yeah, or zeros.
Yep.
I had one, I was at a indoor shoot, and they had a platform, and they put this gator like 5 feet away from the platform, which meant you had to bend down about 45 degrees at the waist.
Yep.
And at that time, I had a program. I don't know where it is anymore, but it would you'd enter in distance between your arrow and your eyes at full draw, the
Mhm.
distance between your eyes and your pin, and the weight of your arrow and the speed of your arrow, and it'd calculate all this stuff in here.
Yep.
So it was really nice because I could set up my 20-yard pin, and I could set as far as I wanted of the pins, and I tested it, and sure enough, it was dead on. Well, it said at 5 feet, I should shoot my 70-yard pin. So I'm at full draw, and I'm bending, bending, bending until I finally get down where that 70-yard pin is on it. And I shot, nailed it. And think about what's going on, because they want to know between your eyes and the arrow, because the
Mhm.
arrow is lower than where your eyes are. So your pin is up here 3-4 inches above where your arrow is. That's why shooting out of a blind, you got to actually look at where the arrow is going to go, not where your pin is, when you first figure it out, because sometimes you got to be up a little taller.
Yep.
And when you think about it, it takes a while for that arrow to meet where the pin is, and then it starts dropping back down again. So on mine, I knew at 10 yards, I was about an inch low. And at 20 yards, I'm dead on, and then it starts dropping from there.
Yeah.
But when you start getting closer, now then it's further and further and further down.
Yep.
And I had to go clear down to like 70-yard pin.
70. Yep.
It's like, I'm only at 5 feet. Why do I got to shoot my 70-yard pin?
Right.
That's because the arrow is not where your pins
Yep.
are.
Yep.
It's
I
got to
think
rise and join.
I think at 3 yards, I think which is 9 feet. I think 57 yards is my mark for that close. So yeah. I think Archer's Advantage and Archer's Mark, I think, are the two programs now that are most prevalent that guys use to where you input all your information and it'll give you a sight tape, or you can it'll tell you in the app on your phone, it'll tell you all your marks. So,
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the program. That was 20 some years ago.
Yep.
So I don't remember the name of the program. And
I bet you it was Archer's Advantage. They've been
I
around.
think
Archer's
I think
Advantage
it
been around
sounded
for a
like
while.
it was, yeah. Archer's Advantage. And if I find it, I don't know if I could even load it because I don't have anything that reads floppies.
Right.
Because it's
It might be
probably on a floppy.
might be on a floppy disk. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd have to dig up one of my old computers and load it on there, but then they'd have USB ports.
Yeah.
So I'd have to hook it on a network or something and stick it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, some of those programs are really good.
Yeah.
And when you said Archer's Advantage, that sounded like what it was.
Mhm.
Because they put all that stuff in there and print the sight tape out. And
Yeah. There's a new one I just recommended to a buddy of mine that Michael Braden recommended. It's Precision Cut Archery is a new one. I guess the guy that started that one. He's an engineer. He's a bow hunter and an engineer. So I guess you put the two of those together, and so I recommended it to a friend of mine, and he just printed out a tape the other day, and he said it was pretty accurate.
yeah, what was the name of that one again?
Precision Cut Archery.
Okay. Yeah, I just kind of looked at both of them up, and I'll put links in the description.
Okay.
So if they're interested, they can find those things. I was talking about those, and those are really good for setting up a bow. You fix pins even.
Yeah.
You go out and you set your 20-yard pin, and then you print your sight tape after you take all your measurements, and then you just lay it right over the top of it and adjust them, and then may have to tweak a little bit, but
Yeah.
if you get them lined up over it just right, look for you not looking at an angle at them, just straight over them. I found when I run it, it was really,
Really
really
dead on.
accurate.
Yeah.
You still got to verify it, but it was close enough that hey, I could always just do them and go if I had to. Okay. So I'm sure you've got some good hunting stories for back when you was in Ohio and some when you're Texas. Tell us about some of your hunts, maybe one that's a memorable hunt that you had when you was when growing up hunting, when with your dad in Ohio. And
So my first hunt, we I had that dart and bow, but I think I was drawn close to 40 pounds. I don't think my dad was real comfortable with that low a draw weight to hunt with. So he sold crossbows as well, and I want to say they were Horton crossbows back in the day.
yeah,
And he took a crossbow off the rack, and he said, "We'll set this crossbow up." We had it was an old Baker wooden tree stand, hang on tree stand. So we went out to a farm that he had permission on. It was a friend of his out east of town where we lived, and pretty decent deer population out in that area. I mean, for what it was, in the mid '80s. I think populations definitely aren't what they are now. Like the management wasn't quite as good by the state DNRs and stuff. So we found a little there was a hay field, and there was a trail that came out, I don't know, maybe 75, 80 yards below where we wanted to set up at. There was a hayfield that came up, and the tree line came out into a point, and then there was a nice trail that kind of went right along the edge of the tree line and then through that point. And on the other side of the point was a standing cornfield. So it seemed like the deer were coming out, 75, 80 yards below and just working their way up that tree line, and then, through that point and then into the standing corn. So my dad said, let's set your stand up here, right at the, kind of where the wood line starts to make that point there, 15, 20 yards off of that trail. And so I put, the old screw in tree steps. I screwed the steps in and went up and hung my tree stand up there. And then we walked back in along the edge of that standing corn, and he hung a ladder stand for himself, probably, I don't know, 75, 80 yards from where I was at. So that first evening we go out, and the tree stand didn't even have a seat. So I should have been standing. I shouldn't have been sitting. I was sitting on the end of the tree stand with my feet dangling, 12 years old, not really knowing any better. And, a group of does came out, down like where we figured they would come from. And they came out and they started feeding out in that hayfield, and they worked their way up along that edge. And there was, probably a fawn from that year, and then maybe a couple of yearlings. And then there was a big doe kind of, in the back. So as they started, working their way up that tree line, they got to me, and they started working their way into the point, and I was letting the three younger ones go by, and the first two had kind of made it by me, and were clearing out the other side of that point, going into the standing corn. Well, he could see them, and he thought I fell asleep. So he yelled, Tim, shoot the deer on the left, because they would stop and, and just freeze and not know what to do. And I didn't know what to do. And I yelled back, I'm waiting for the bigger one on the right. And then everything, they all took off running. And yeah, he came over and, kind of laughed and giggled, thought it was pretty funny. But it was really funny. We would go back to our store. My mom would work the store, whatever, when we were hunting. We went back to the store that evening. There was always a group of guys that would come in, wander in and out, in the evenings or whatever, and drink coffee and swap stories. And his buddies came in, that evening, and when we came back, and he told the story, and everybody got a good laugh. And I was a little embarrassed, but it's one of those ones that, your first time out there, you'll never forget it.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Where he yells, shoot him. It's like, you're waiting for two more to come in, a big one.
So yeah, he got a kick out of that. He told that story. He probably told that story 100 times to, people. Another good one. I don't know if it was that same year or maybe the following year. We had a friend of his that had there was a lot of hunting camps, like in this mountain area in central Pennsylvania. A lot of people from where we lived would drive up there and go to these hunting camps. And there was a lot of like state and national land that you could hunt there. There was, thousands of acres. So there was, it was a big, kind of a big culture to where, you'd get a lot of guys had camps up there. Well, he had a friend that he worked with that had a camp, and he invited us up, and we went up. I guess it was that weekend that archery season was opening up. So we decided, I think we had gone up on like a Friday, and we said, we'll get up in the morning and we'll go and squirrel hunt and scout and figure out, a place to set some tree stands up to hunt that evening. So we went out squirrel hunting in the morning, and we went out on the side of this, it's kind of the start of where the Appalachian Mountains start, up around Du Bois, Pennsylvania area. So we're sitting there in the dark, and we're kind of, looking down on this big ravine big outcroppings of rocks and, big old growth, like old oak trees, beech trees, big mature trees. So as the sun started coming, it started getting light. Like I looked around and like it seemed like there were squirrels everywhere. So I mean, it's like we had hit a migration of squirrels or something. There's beech nuts falling where they're cutting, and so I started shooting. I'd shoot one, and then I'd sit for a little while and wait until they shooting a. I think I probably was shooting a 20 gauge at that time, and these squirrels, they were pretty high up in the tree. So I'd shoot one and they'd fall down and I'd get it, and, put it in my game pouch or whatever. I'd sit for a little while until I saw another one. Well, about the third or fourth squirrel that I shot, it had fallen, way from the top of this tree and fell down on a rock. So I just, a lot of times, squirrels, you have to pick them up and maybe put your foot on their head and kind of twist the neck or whatever to make sure they're dead and put them in the game pouch. Well, this thing had fallen, from way up top of this tree and fell down on this rock. So I just assumed it was dead, and I stuck it in the game pouch and, went back to hunting, went back and sat by my tree and waited for another one. And another one came out and I shot and, shot like the fourth or fifth squirrel. Well, I reached in the game pouch to put it in the game pouch with the other ones, and it must have just it must not have been fully dead, and because I didn't twist the neck on it, and that squirrel latched down on my finger. So, and he was hunting up the hill from me, so of course I had to go find him. And I walk up the hill, and he's sitting on the ground, leaned up against this big old log, and I got a squirrel hanging off my finger, and he's rolling on the ground laughing at me. And I'm trying to explain to him what happened. I couldn't get it off, because I guess a squirrel's jaw is hinged, kind of like a snapping turtle. Like they have to close all the way before they'll open back up.
Oh
But
yeah.
he was able to get his knife in there and pry it open. But yeah, he that was another story that he told over and over and over again. And he would ask me, he said, "Boy, those squirrels are biting good today, huh?"
Those are some good stories, some funny
Yeah.
ones.
So yeah, he was my dad was a character for sure. But
Do you have any really challenging hunts that you was on there?
um I haven't I've mostly just hunted whitetail. Um just like Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. I've never done like any Western hunting, or um that's something I want to do. I haven't had a chance yet. I'd love to do like some antelope, some elk, something. Most of my hunting experiences are, um, you know, set a tree stand up, a couple hundred yards back in the woods, and park the truck and sneak back in. And um, haven't had a lot of really like, challenging, kind of adventure kind of hunts at all.
Yeah, so some have some really challenging ones, and other ones have some really inspirational ones, and some just like you had a couple of kind of funny hunts, and ones that you get laugh out of. And
Yep.
uh, I know then sometimes you have a nice memorable hunt. You've talked about a couple of hunts that are memorable. Do you have any other ones that are um memorable that you think about it once in a while, that you told a couple of good ones?
I guess I did a lot of hunting with my brothers. So I've killed some nice bucks where we kind of did some kind of work together. Kind of put our heads together to kill some pretty good bucks. And I guess one that really comes to mind, my brother had been hunting this one farm in southern Ohio, um, and just having a really tough time. He had a particular buck that he was trying to kill, and it was our gun season. Actually, we Ohio was do you you hunted with they had a shotgun season, so you'd hunt with most guys would hunt with a slug gun. Well, when the inline muzzleloaders came out, like everybody kind of, majority of guys kind of switched to the inline muzzleloaders because you could get a little more distance out of them, and they were, quite a bit more accurate than a slug gun. So he had this one particular buck that just kind of kept giving him the slip. And he and I were walking in, and he told me, he said, every time I go in here, like he said, I seem to kind of kick this buck out of this area, and his, and I always kind of find his tracks, or I'll get a look at him, like, running all the way across the ravine. So he had me go in first, and he was going to come around on this other bench, around this, he walked around this hayfield and was dropped down on this bench. Well, he actually wound up running the deer to me, instead of me running the deer to him. And I wound up shooting the deer, and he said that worked exactly the opposite of what I thought it would work. But it was a good day though, because we were together. We kind of worked together and put our heads together, and wound up being successful.
Yeah, that is, it's kind of interesting how, he's set up, I'm gonna go over here so you can chase it to me, and he ended up chasing it to you.
Yep. And
That was
when
pretty
that
cool.
deer came by me, he was barreling. He was running pretty fast, and I pulled up on him, and I seemed to kind of just get the scope on him as there was a logging road as he was crossing that logging road, and I knew I only had one shot at him, and I wound up probably I think only 2 deer I've shot, running and actually hit my whole life. But
Yeah, they're tough to hit running.
they are.
I did that one time on a deer that's coming down the trail, and I'd moved my tree stand further north because they were coming down to me, after shooting time. And I says, well, I want to be in my tree stand, 4 o'clock.
Mhm.
Well, some kids was out walking further north. It was public area, and they kicked the deer up a little bit early. So this deer come by, and it's like, okay, and I up shooting it, get a little bit far back on it. They ended up
Mhm.
getting it the next night, but yeah, it was like I got in the tree stand. It was like right at 4, right after 4. Within 10 minutes, I shot the deer.
Well,
Yeah, I was expecting to come back a little bit later, but not so quick. But you know, there were some kids up walking around, in the it was in a public, place to camp and stuff in there.
uh,
It was a state park where they camp, and then, we hunt in there, and that's one of those where if I'd have stayed down there, it'd probably run past me anyway in normal shooting time, but I wanted to move so I could intercept it quicker, because this
yeah,
every night that's coming by after shooting time, after shooting time, after shooting time. So I was like, okay, I gotta move way up the other end.
yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
intercept.
That would be frustrating.
Yeah. So tell us about some of your Texas hunts.
Um, I haven't hunted a ton here in Texas. Just basically the last couple of years. Everything is Most of the hunting here in Texas is lease. Like you get on either get on a lease, or you pay to hunt somewhere, do a day hunt, or with an outfitter. There's a lot of high fence stuff. So this past couple of years, I started hunting it's actually a really small piece. It's only 25 acres. It was a property that my wife's boss bought, and he offered it up, for me to hunt there. So I said, we'll go check it out and see if there's anything out there. And we went out and we found a couple trails, and so everything. You definitely, there's not a lot of food here. There's some acorns, and they have some browse and stuff, part of the year, until everything turns brown. So most everybody hunts over corn or protein, or whatever. So I said, well, let me get a couple bags of corn and throw it out, and I'll put a camera out and see what I get coming in. Well, I threw 3 or 4 bags of corn out, and next thing you know, I've got every deer in the area. I got pictures of big group of deer coming in, that first week. So we just kind of started patterning them a little bit. And then I started getting pigs in. So we've got to definitely have a wild pig issue here in Texas. So that's kind of a funny story. Once I kind of got set up there in the area, and I got a blind, got it all brushed in, and putting corn out on a regular basis, and just kind of staying out of it until I was ready to hunt it. And started getting pictures of pigs coming in on a regular basis. Well, if you're just hand throwing corn, they'll just come in and eat until as long as they want. Basically, they would come in, like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and they would literally stay till like 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm like, well, we gotta trim these guys down a little bit, because they're gonna eat me out of house and home.
Yeah.
So one morning I went and I didn't encounter any of them, because they were always coming in after dark. Encountering plenty of deer, and like I said, I was kind of having a little bit of issue. I was spooking deer, just because, like, I think one time I brushed the top of the blind with my top cam, and that cleared everything out. Had the wind swirl on me one time, and cleared them all out. Just real spooky deer. But went in and got in the blind one. I think it was on a Saturday morning, and got in there in the dark. And it was, I would get in there, an hour and a half before it got light, and I would just sneak in there real easy, and real kind of low impact, and get in the blind, and let it settle down for a while. Well, I could see the cameras facing the blind about 40 yards away, and I kept seeing the red light on the camera going off. I'm like, something's down there. So I started listening, and I could hear the pigs. I could hear the grunting, and like even the bigger ones almost made like a growling noise. Like it was kind of, you're sitting there in the dark, and all you have is your bow. You don't have a pistol or anything on you, and you're hearing these pigs inside of 20 yards, like, making the noises that they make.
Yeah.
And knowing the teeth that they have. I had some on camera that had, pretty good cutters. And you're sitting there in the dark, listening to these pigs so close, and you're kind of, thinking in your mind, okay, what am I going to do if they come in this blind? Like, and they actually did wind up coming pretty close. They came up, within, probably 5 to 8 yards of the blind, and I could hear them out there, grunting, carrying on. And I don't know if they actually, caught my wind or whatever, but they actually, they wound up taking off, like where it was just kind of cracking light where I could just barely see them. So they wound up taking off. But yeah, it was kind of you're that close to them, and sitting there in the dark, it kind of makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up a little
Yeah.
bit. So, but they did wind up coming back the following morning. Like, I don't know, probably it was well after light. It was probably 7:30. They wound up coming in, and I shot one, and I mean, it didn't go 5 yards or whatever, and it kind of balled up in one of the cedar trees and was squealing. And once it was quiet, like 10 minutes later, here they come right back, right back to the corn. And they wound up shooting another one. But so yeah, they're definitely an issue here.
Yeah, there's a lot of places the pigs are just kind of taking over, and
Yeah.
I know one time I went down to southern part of Texas on a hog hunt, and the hog hunt was pretty cheap. This has been many years ago, and I was like $350 for my wife and I to go down, and that was included 2 hogs and room and board and meals, and because you're not going to get somebody to pay high dollar coming to hunt a hog when they're getting that time $4,000 or $5,000 for somebody to come down and hunt a deer.
Yeah.
And when the hogs are destroying the habitat for the deer, then here, come down and basically just pay for room and board and food, and kill a couple pigs.
And try to help rid us of some of these pigs down here.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's operations down here where they hunt them out of helicopters. You can hunt them out of a helicopter with an AR, and there's you can kill them about any way you want to down here. There's no You can shoot them at night. You can shoot them, with a spotlight. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So
Yeah, I've seen some videos where they got the night scopes on them, and they're just shooting them at night. You can see the little white spot for the pig, and you know, bang, there it goes.
yeah. I had a good friend of mine down here. I just kind of got to know him the last, probably 4, 5, 6 months. He was one of the guys I was kind of working with judging yardage. And he killed some really big, they hunted him with thermals at night. And he killed some really big ones. He just wound up passing away here a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, his name was Michael Parks, but he killed some big old pigs. So there's another, her name's Sarah Hallgren. She shoots the women's known pro in the ASA, and she lives here. She's got a place up in Brady, Texas, and she shoots some monster pigs. She's got quite a few of them up there.
Yeah, monster pigs means lots of little piglets.
Yeah. Yep.
Kind of like the pythons taking over down in Florida.
Down in Florida. Yep.
Yeah, I was watching the swamp people. They went down there catching pythons down there in Florida, when gator season closes in Louisiana. And man, they're I wouldn't want to go after either one of them.
No. No. I have another good friend that I shoot with too. His name is Brad Martin. He shoots the senior pro class with me. He's out of Vicksburg, Mississippi, but he's a wildlife conservation officer there in Mississippi. But he's the guy that they call when they have a gator in somebody's pool or in the yard or whatever, and they've got to come get it out of there. He's the one who comes and retrieves it. But he showed me a video. He had one a couple years ago, about an 8 or 10 footer, and they went and got it. It was in the lady's yard, and they got it out. They got the noose around the neck, and they pulled it out, by the truck, and had it on there. And he got on the back of it, and he had the roll of tape, and he was getting ready to. They took the noose off, and he was holding the mouth, and he was getting ready to go around it with the tape, and it started rolling. And he just grabbed a hold of it on both sides, and I said, "What did you do?" He's like, you got to hold on until it quits rolling, because that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to get you off of it. And once it gets you off of it, then it can get a hold of you. But he wound up holding on until they got it back under control again, and they got it taped up and in the bed of the truck, and took it off. But so
Yeah.
I'm always telling him every time I see him, I'm like, "Man, you got to quit messing with them gators." He said, "Nope, I'll never quit."
Well, once you know what you're doing with them, it's not quite so bad, but it's like, no, I think I'll pass right
Yeah,
now.
that's one of those, you leave it to the professionals, right?
Yeah, yeah. He's the pro, let him have it.
Yep.
I might shoot one from a distance, but that'd be about it.
Yep.
I don't want to get up and close to them. Like when I go out in the boats, and then they're pulling in, they got to fight them, and then finally get the rifle on them and shoot them, and and then they got to haul them in, and fun to watch them do
Yeah,
it.
it's
But
fun. Yeah, it's fun to watch from a distance, right?
yeah, from the couch.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
don't think I'd want to
absolutely.
watch them from inside the boat,
No, no.
because you couldn't just watch them. You'd have to do something.
Yeah, you got to get involved somehow.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know I've seen, where they're out there bow fishing for them, and shooting them from the platforms, and that's not quite so bad because you're actually killing them.
Mhm.
Probably a little slower depending on where you hit them, but at
Yep.
least they're not have all their energy.
Yeah, you're not trying to reel them in like a blue marlin.
Yeah, yeah, that would be. Yeah, they gotta be pretty strong to do that stuff. What they're doing,
Yep.
fighting those things, and you see sometimes that that one person trying to do it all by themselves, and they're pulling them in and shooting with one hand and hauling them into the boats, and yeah,
Yep.
nice to watch them do it.
It is. Yep. Absolutely.
So, what other hunting down in Texas is completely different than any place with trees. What all of you had to you talked about you things adjusting to the way you hunt differently in Texas because there's especially no trees, or what there is, they're not very big. What's the biggest thing you've had to adapt to?
Um, I guess you really have to watch the wind. Um, I mean, sometimes you could, like where we hunted Southern Ohio, you had a lot of terrain. So if you got certain winds, like, it would blow out over top of, um, where deer were coming from, or, you could get away with, um, entering or exiting with certain winds because of the way the terrain worked here. There's not where we're hunting. There's not a whole lot of terrain, and that your scent just really blows a long way. So you really have to really be mindful to only hunt certain setups with make sure you have the wind right. And sometimes even the wind swirls, and you still wind up getting busted. But like you said, like, educating, you don't want to educate deer, how you had them looking up in the trees. It seems like certain setups here, if I've hunted and the wind was wrong, or it swirled on me, that, you wouldn't see anything for, out of that same setup for a long time. Like they really kind of, um, they were on to you pretty quick. They were patterning you quicker than you were patterning them, for sure. So you definitely had to be, you got to be on your P's and Q's here for sure.
Have you ever tried like any scent blocker or scent lock or anything like that?
I do wear the scent lock, um, but a lot of the time, like most of the, like October here, it's still like you still have days like in the 80s and 90s. So most of the time you're in the ground blind, um, you're in a light pair of pants, and then usually I'll wear the top that I'll wear a black, like the set lock base layers.
Yeah.
So basically you're kind of hunting out of a more or less in a t-shirt, because it's still pretty hot. Even all the way into like November and December, it starts cooling down a little bit. But yeah, we're kind of lucky to have for it to get below 40 before Christmas time usually. So yeah, that's definitely an adjustment. I enjoyed, I did a lot of like inline muzzleloader hunting, like in the late muzzleloader season back in
Yeah.
Ohio. I really enjoyed like that real, I guess I don't know if you'd call it extreme cold weather, but where it would get down below zero, or near zero, where you had a lot of snow on the ground, and there was snow and blowing, and where the deer would group up and herd up, and there wouldn't be a lot of guys in the woods. So um, you definitely don't get that here. So it seems like when we do get the one particular property that I'm hunting, um, it's hard for me to hunt it in a north wind. So when we do get those cold fronts, it's usually with a north wind, and I usually can't get into my setup there. So it's kind of, I see everybody on Facebook, everybody's happy because there's a north wind coming and we've got a cold front coming, and I'm waiting it out for a southwest wind, but
Yeah. Because your property is not set up for
not set
north
up for it.
winds.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something you got to be mindful of. And I know I use the uh, scent lock stuff as well. And I've got the big coveralls, and then I've got just a regular pants and shirt that you can put on for the earlier season. And it works if you don't have you know a lot of wind or anything. You can go in and don't have to worry about the wind up here as much. If you got your scent covered.
Mhm.
But if you don't have that kind of stuff, then yeah, you really got to watch it.
Yeah. I'm kind of intrigued by the whole, the ozonics and some of those other products.
Oh yeah.
I've not tried that yet, but I've been kind of curious about that as to, maybe trying that, in the ground blind there.
Yeah, that actually, if it works, I've never tried it either, so I don't know if it works or not. But if it works, that might be something in the ground blind because you're kind of contained.
Mhm.
If you can eliminate your scent inside of there,
Yeah.
that might be, something worth checking out and seeing, how well it does work. And
Yeah. Maybe explore that.
yeah, anything to help get an advantage when you got spooky deer like that.
Yeah. 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 They definitely challenged me last year for sure. I was kind of frustrated for a little while, but they
Well,
were
and a
giving
lot of
me
them
the,
around here, a lot of them around here are so used to people being around because, you know, they're not as spooked, when they have, they do catch a scent.
yeah.
They're not quite as spooked as they are when you don't when you're out in the middle of nowhere, like out in the sand hills where you don't have a lot of humans and all of a sudden smell a human scent.
Yeah.
This is a strange sound, strange smell. And around here, especially when you're working on farm stuff, and
Mhm.
as long as you act and sound like the farmer, lots of times they ignore you.
Yeah. There's a lot of predators here too. I think that's probably one of the other reasons too why the deer is spooky as they are. Um,
Yeah.
the coyotes are a lot of coyotes. We have bobcats. I encountered a couple of bobcats last year. I wound up shooting one with my bow, but I wasn't able to recover him. He went down and got into some like an outcropping of rocks, like a little, almost like a little cave area. He was able to get down in there, and I wasn't able to recover him. And then you do have the occasional mountain lion or whatever that you'll see. Um, every once in a while you'll get people that on the neighborhood pages or whatever will post on Facebook. They got one um, on the ring camera or whatever in the street, or so you do have those down here occasionally as well. So that might be another reason. And then I think the pigs really, when the pigs come in, they run all the deer out.
Oh yeah.
So they don't play well with others.
Yeah, you might need to start doing some coyote and pig hunting for a while to
Yep,
kind of
yep,
thin them out in the
absolutely.
area, let the deer
Yep.
come back in.
I told myself, I said, in the off season, I was going to do some pig hunting. Um, but with the heat and stuff, like it's hard to get yourself, back out there again. But
And get you night vision and do it at night where it's cooler.
when it's cooler, yep, yep, absolutely.
Well, you can do that down there. So
Yep.
I don't know here in Nebraska if you can hunt wild hogs at night or not, but
Mm.
I've never checked because I don't really have a place to go hunt them. I don't, right around here, we don't have the problem with them right here, but I know there are places that have problems with them. And we do have mountain lions here. I've seen a couple of them. I've seen a
Yeah.
small one and a big one
Wow.
time. So they're here.
Yeah.
In fact, the one farmer said, yeah, he's seen tracks in the 60s. He's seen mountain lion tracks.
Wow.
And game parks, he kept selling. It wasn't until one got hit on one of the highways out here, and then they had to admit that there was around here. So,
One thing I haven't got to hunt yet down here that I want to, I would definitely want to hunt a javelina. Um,
oh yeah,
I haven't had a chance to do that. I've seen them. I went on a hunt in South Texas with a friend of mine, his dad's place. It was um, but we had some come out to the feeder, and I asked I was hunting with the ranch manager, and I asked him if I could shoot one, and he said you could shoot one, but he said the buck that we're after, he said if you make a bunch of racket, shooting one of those javelinas, he said good chance you won't see that buck because I was only there for I think 2 or 3 days.
oh yeah,
So, but wound up harvesting the buck the following evening. So he
yeah. I was not shooting javelina.
it was
I know. I one time I went down with a friend of mine down to it was Cotulla, Texas,
Mhm.
right there, right by the Mexican border, someplace. I don't know exactly where it's at, but on a hog hunt, and I shot a javelina, and I was down there going to do archery for the hogs, and they bait them, but I'm in a rifle tower,
Yep.
so I'm basically standing in the doorway. Well, the last day we're going to be there, the other guy come down and shoot a rifle, and I had my bow. I didn't bring a rifle, though, so I borrowed his rifle,
Mhm.
and he videoed on a VCR tape, and I took one shot, and I don't know, I missed somehow. I ended up getting a couple of them, after all, but on a regular VCR, at that time I had a VCR player that I could do frame at a
Mhm.
time. And I wanted to see where I missed, because like, well, okay, one, I wasn't familiar with the gun. I really like trigger, but um so I'm framing advance, and we actually caught the vapor trail from the bullet on one of the frames on the
Oh,
VC on
wow.
a VCR.
Wow.
We got the vapor trail. Oh, that was so cool.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting them, and I shot a female that had a baby in it, and the baby, not even born yet, had razor sharp teeth already. Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And the guy told me one time they had one, and it lived, and it was chasing around all over. They had to hop up on the couches because it's basically trying to attack their ankles.
Oh, wow.
But they said, oh, they taste terrible. Thought it tastes like pork.
Yeah, that's a couple people down here that I've asked about it. They said there's some of the Mexican people know how to cook them. Like there's a trick to it, but most people say that they're absolutely horrible, just terrible.
I brought the meat back. I cooked it like anything else, but
Yeah,
I thought it was okay.
right.
Not a lot of meat on it, but
Yeah,
you know, kind of a small animal. But yeah, that'd be kind of fun. Go down and shoot some more hogs.
yeah.
Well, I think got one more question.
Okay.
Um, what advice would you give a new archer that's thinking about getting into archery?
Well, that's a really good question. Um, I would try to ask around and find the best pro shop in your area. Um, find the most knowledgeable guys who are going to get you set up correctly, with the right draw length. And like you said, get you set up in that price point that fits your budget, um, and get the bow mechanically set up correctly for you. Get the right draw length, and get the best equipment that you can afford for your budget. Um, and spend some time with you and get you kind of, um, get you squared away and get you to where, like you said, you're not going out and you're losing a bunch of arrows and you're having a bad experience, and then you're putting it down, putting the bow in the corner and, not picking it up again. To where they're getting you on the right path. So yeah, I definitely think we need to support, our local pro shops and stuff that, especially if they're, like you said, like you had, or the one that I go to, if they're, they're really good, and they're going through all the proper steps to kind of get you set up and get you squared away. Um, that's We definitely need to support that. And yeah, for a new archer, I would say that's really important to find. And I would say maybe a second to that as well is, find a buddy or find a friend that, it's a little bit more knowledgeable than you, and, and kind of latch onto them, and, spend some time practicing, and, and try and glean and learn as much from them as you can. Ask a lot of questions. There's no dumb questions, in archery. Just if you don't understand something, ask. And there's a lot of resources out there, online. Um, there's a good app. It's called Bow Shop Bible. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No, I haven't.
It's a good app you can download for your phone that's got a lot of tuning information on there.
Oh, Shop Bible.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so it has when you download it, there's parts of it that are free, and then part of it that you pay for, and it's not much. I think it's like, I don't know, it's like a couple dollars a month or something. And he has a lot of tutorial videos on there where he explains, arrow flight and tuning and cam lean, all the different ins in it. So you can kind of go as deep as you want, on that app, and kind of learn, the dynamics of, you know, how your bow works. And um,
Yeah, just kind of looking at the site. I've got that. I'll put a link in the description
okay,
to those places that we've talked about, and that way if anybody's interested in it, they can go click on the link instead of trying to remember what it was and just look in the description
right,
and go. It's like I try to do that, something we talk about, if I can, get the link to it, I'll stick the link in there and make it easier because, we're here to help.
yep,
Uh, and if you don't have a shop nearby, um, you can join different groups like the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group that
yep,
I started and I run, here to help you. If you're struggling with something, have somebody video you, upload the video, take on your phone and create the video and upload from your phone to the group and say, hey, I'm having a problem. Here's it at. And somebody is going to give you some advice. Could be me.
yeah,
I've been an archery instructor since 95, so I've taught lots and lots of people how to shoot.
right,
I can generally make most shooters better. Some of the top shooters, it's a little more difficult because their technique is so good. You got to
yeah,
look for little fine points.
right,
Um, I've talked to, a few archers and then, that are just starting out, and I ask them, it's like, I'm going to give you your first lesson for free. Quit pulling the trigger.
yeah,
And I say, huh? Yeah, you're pulling the trigger. Quit doing it. Well, how'd you know? Well, I've seen many archers doing it that way.
yep,
Even the guys on TV, some
oh
of the
yeah,
old TV shows.
yep.
Oh man, they got that finger up there and they get ready and they just cram on that trigger, just slam on that trigger, and
Down
they're
here in
like,
Texas, we like to call that rattlesnake in it.
yeah. Or the worst ones I see is they'll sit there and they take the bow up there and they'll stretch way back and then try and pull and then bring it up. And it's like, dude, you need to learn how to draw correctly and crank the weight down till you learn how to draw correctly.
Yep,
Yeah. Or you see the guys try and draw it across their chest and then raise it up. Well, you're using your arms to draw with and not your back muscles. And
yep,
yeah. Getting a coach. If you can start off and even if you just get a couple lessons just to get you started.
mm,
That's what's nice about going to a lot of the shops and buying from them because they're going to help you to start with.
yep,
It's like I did, and like you said, your shop does. They're going to teach you how to shoot the bow when you get it. Um, Lots of times, when I'm helping somebody, whether I had my own shop or as a Bass Pro Cabela's, whichever, because I worked at both places, um, they I'm going to be teaching you how to shoot because when I set it up, I need to set it up with your proper technique. I'm going to teach you back tension release from your very first shot, and I'm going to teach that way. And when I teach, I also explain why I'm telling you to do something.
yeah,
You know, I don't like instructors say, "Well, do it this way." Well, why? Because I said so. Well, why? Like the kids say, "Why? Why? Why?"
yep,
So I'll tell you why. And I teach everybody exactly the same way, and then I modify it depending on each individual shooter because they're all different. So you just start off one way and then you modify it because we're all different.
yep,
And that's where, go through like you was saying, find some place that you can go into. And if you don't, well, then you're going to have to, find some place that you can talk to that has the knowledge that they
Yeah.
can pass on. And just because you go out to YouTube doesn't mean they're telling you the right way to do it or the best way to do it.
Yeah.
I've seen many videos and it's like, I'm surprised you can hit anything, you know. But it's just a matter of, getting somebody that you can talk to and you trust.
And if anybody ever wanted to reach out to me on Facebook, Tim Yohman, Yohman on Facebook, and then my Instagram is Reverend Tim Tom. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to those in the description so it makes it easier to find you and everything else in that way. Hey, if you have a question, those of us doing it for a while, we're more than happy to help you. Um, we might be standing on a shooting line shooting against you and you're struggling. You know what? A lot of us, we're going to help you get better, because when you get better, I have to get better,
Yep.
which means you got to get better and I can get better. And then lots of times too, when you might be struggling with something and you're not really noticing it, but someone else is struggling and you help them, and it's like, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong.
Yep.
You know, especially when you have a video and you show it and it's like, that's not what I tell people to do. I'm doing
Right.
this wrong. I got to change. So once you know what you're looking for, you just watch your own videos. You can see, oh, I I I didn't pull completely through. I didn't do this or I didn't do this, and you can critique yourself. But
Yep.
if you don't know what you're doing wrong, the comments, well, practice more. If you're practicing wrong technique, you're only going to get better at shooting it wrong.
Yep.
So you need to know what you need to improve. And you know, if you don't have an open mind, you're not going to get any better, and an instructor's not going to help you.
Yep. Agreed.
Because if you're not going to do what I suggest, then you need to find a different person that's going to try and teach you, because you're just, if you're not going to put time in. And, when I do any coaching, that's one of the things I ask. Are you open to, for coaching? Is that something that you're willing to put in the work? If you're not willing to put in the work, it's not quick.
Yeah.
I can improve people pretty quick sometimes, depending on
Yeah.
how their technique is. I spent a couple of times I spent only about 45 minutes, and I took this one guy, wanted to shoot too long a draw length, which a lot of people are, too
Hmm.
long a draw length, changed his form. He went from at 20 yards, going from probably 5, 6 inch group to 3 hours touching in 45 minutes, just by changing draw length and changing your form,
Yep.
and your technique. I had one guy that come in the shop. He had a PhD, so he had the money. He didn't want to buy a low end bow. He wanted to buy a high end bow, because
Hmm.
he just wanted to buy one, and so we sold him that. 2 weeks later, comes in. It's like, I just wrecked in there. I got a Robin Hood. I'm gonna hang it up in my office.
Yeah.
2 weeks after, but he had never shot a bow.
Wow.
2 weeks after getting his very first bow and shooting, he gets a Robin Hood. Like, proper technique.
Yep. Yep. 100%.
That's why I quit shooting single spots, because I kept breaking too many arrows. So, yeah, hey, it's been great talking with you.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
I'm sure, keep us informed on what you're doing and any, events you go to, and, just let us know how you do. And it's been really great talking with you. And I'm sure we'll do this again. And for those that are still listening or watching, thanks for listening or watching. And remember, join the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group. We have a lot of people out there that have been shooting and for decades, as well as instructors and techs. So if you're having a problem, let us know. We'll be glad to help you. You can also watch this on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself, where not only have archery stuff, but I have other stuff, hence the name Learn to Fix It Yourself. A lot of other stuff out there. You can listen to the podcast wherever podcasts are sent out. Like at Spotify, you can also get on audible.com and look for Arch Talk 101, and you can listen to it there. That's kind of nice because it'll just keep showing the next one. So that's been best place to always get a hold of us. We're always around, willing to help. Tim, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate you coming onto the show.
Yep. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. My name is Rory Canterbury, and I've been your host today on Arch Talk 101, and we'll see you on the next one.